Ford Mustang Dark Horse has not lived up to the hype just yet. We're going to take a look at some of the more popular theories as to why. Coming up next. What's going on, everybody? Hope you're doing good today. All right, the Ford Mustang Dark Horse has yet to win a NASCAR Cup Series race, and theories about this abound, from they're spending too much money on F1 to it's a poor design to the teams weren't ready, this, that, and the other thing. So we're just going to get into each one of those, starting with the design. So when the Ford Mustang Dark Horse first came out, all you heard about was how good looking it was, these raised fenders. Everybody was super stoked about it. It was a really, really good looking car. It was well received from a design perspective, so that's not the part of the design we're talking about. The design perspective part that we're talking about is it's just not winning on the NASCAR Cup Series racetrack, and I've heard some other people reach out to me during my live streams and say it's not winning in other series too. I can't speak to that. I'm pretty much here for NASCAR. But if that's true, is it not winning races in other series and not winning races in the Cup Series because it was a poor design maybe for the Cup Series? I think it's a fair criticism. So let's start first off with those massive raised fenders. I'm not an aerodynamics expert, and the people that engineered this thing are definitely much smarter than me, but I can tell you one thing. I don't see these raised fenders on any of the other NASCAR Cup Series cars, and I'm saying everything else on the Mustang Dark Horse sort of looks the same as the rest of the cars. Could this be one of the issues holding it back? Is it hurting corner speed? I don't know. It is worth speculating, and I do see a lot of people talking about, is it the fenders, the raised fenders, causing them to be not good? Another thing worth noting is Chevrolet, when it first brought the Camaro into the series, they had a poor design on the Camaro. They ended up eventually having to redo the design. I think Chase Elliott and Austin Dillon were, just off the top of my head, two of the only guys that won in 2018 with that new Camaro, and they struggled for a long time, and there were a lot of theories and factors as to why that didn't run well. But at the end of the day, I think you have to put it on the design of that one, and Chevrolet had to end up getting a new nose. Is this going to be a route that Ford takes? Does Ford do a redesign, or does Ford just not necessarily do a redesign? Let's just say Ford decides, okay, we pushed the Dark Horse this year, let's push the GT next year, let's push the Shelby or whatever variation of Mustang they want to push, so that they can possibly get a redesign on the nose or the fenders or whatever happens to be holding this thing back. So first off, you have to look at the design. Was the design what cost it? But not everybody is sold on the design of this Mustang Dark Horse is what cost it. Some people are pointing toward F1. So I was in the chat of the NASCAR Weekly podcast, and I threw out sort of tongue-in-cheek, jokingly, that Ford is not doing well in NASCAR because they have aligned themselves in F1 with Red Bull to develop an engine. But the more I thought, and I did mean it as a joke when I said it then, I was just kind of stirring the pot. But the more I thought about it, yes, Red Bull is mainly designing that engine, and it's mostly a Red Bull effort. But that being said, Ford is essentially sponsoring that effort. And if I know anything about racing, it is this. You can set any type of budget you want to in racing. You can do the 3 times, whatever you think it's going to cost. Go ahead and multiply that by 3 times so that you have enough of a buffer. You can do all the right things in budgeting, but I'll tell you one thing about racing. You're always going to run into something. It is always going to go over budget, and that's why you see even the bigger teams in NASCAR always talking about, yeah, we hardly ever make money. We're lucky to break even. You hear that a lot. So no matter what the budget that Ford set was, I can almost guarantee you that they are going to go over that budget, and they possibly have gone over that budget. So yes, even though Ford might not be the one actively, they might not be designing that engine over at Ford, they're with Red Bull designing it, and Red Bull is probably taking the lead on that, allegedly. I think it is fair to say that it probably has gone over what Ford thought would be budget-wise, and it could be a legitimate, this is just, me throwing a theory out here, and this is a theory you hear a lot, but it could very well mean that they went over their budget, and that takes away budget money for their other racing series, and that also could be one of the reasons that the Dark Horse Mustang is off to a slow start, to say the least. Could it be that the new car just finally caught up to Ford's teams, and that's why they're underperforming? Let me tell you what I mean by that. Penske and RFK essentially carried Ford last season. SHR, which at one time had been a very, very dominant Ford team, they've been a little bit off for 3 to 4 years right now. So is it something that this curveball, Penske didn't get ahead of it? Penske is not necessarily doing great, although the best driver isn't a Penske. I realize that. But Joey Logano and Austin Cindric have not liked this new Dark Horse Mustang as much as Ryan Blaney has. And like I spoke on with Chevrolet, Chase Elliott was really good, but none of the other Chevrolet drivers really could figure out the new Camaro when it came out. So there is always going to be an outlier. But Chevrolet didn't let Chase Elliott be in the outlier in that Chevrolet car. They didn't let that hold them back from doing a total redesign. And I don't think Ford should do the same thing, make the same mistake. Just because Ryan Blaney is being an outlier this season, just because Noah Gragson is being an outlier this season, I don't think you need to necessarily not redesign this if that's the route that they're thinking about going. But that being said, Penske carrying the organization, much like in 2018, Hendrick carried the organization. When Hendrick was down, Chevrolet was down. Now that Penske is down, it looks like Ford is down. And RFK, that had a massive leap in performance last year, doing really well for themselves, they're still not running bad, but they're not running nearly as good as they did last season. So it could be the team structure overall, basically saying as Penske goes, so goes Ford. Just like as Hendrick goes, so goes Chevrolet, as it went in 2018. So could that be the reason that the Ford Mustang Dark Horse is not doing as well as people had hoped? Because Penske itself might be down. Sans the outlier, Ryan Blaney. No disrespect to Ryan Blaney. And oddly, I want to throw one thing out here. Even though Ford's having a down year, I would say Stewart-Haas Racing is actually performing better than they had last year, even with if you want to look at it this way, a slower Mustang. So that's also another interesting tidbit from this. Once again, speaking of outliers, of course, the outlier with that one would be Ryan Preece. Ryan Preece, the 41 car just cursed. Did Kurt Busch put a curse on it when he left the 41 car? Because it has not been good since Kurt Busch left the 41. So the rest of Stewart-Haas Racing, though, without the curse, is doing well. So what is the actual reason the Ford Mustang Dark Horse is not performing the way they thought it would do? I don't know. I can't tell you. The engineers and designers that made this thing are definitely much smarter than me. They put a lot of effort into it, a lot of research. Anything could have happened. Did their simulations or whatever not factor into real world the same way they thought it would be? Anything like that could happen, right? All I can tell you is this. When I was a little kid, I had a Lamborghini on my wall. I had a Lamborghini notebook, all kinds of stuff. I thought the Lamborghini Countach was the fastest car in the world. That thing looked sick. It was an amazing design. It looked like the fastest car in the world. Later on, when we learned more about aerodynamics and stuff like that, they put the Lamborghini Countach under the scrutiny of an aerodynamic test. It had some of the worst aerodynamics of all time. So despite the design looking really good, and the Ford Mustang Dark Horse is a work of art. It is a gorgeous looking car. Sometimes that doesn't always translate to the racetrack, and is it going to be sort of like the Lamborghini Countach, where it looks really good and it's a very stylish car and it's great for cruising, but when you put it to the test, it might not pass the test when it comes to racing. Maybe that's what happened with the Ford Mustang Dark Horse. I don't know. All I can tell you is that Ford might need to pull a redesign on this if they can't get something going moving forward. That being said, Ford is still really, really good at the super speedways. If it wasn't for some wrecks and some just really bad luck at super speedways, which super speedways, you can't have a racing deal all alone just on super speedways, but they're still good at the super speedways. So they do have that. If it wasn't for bad luck, they'd probably have a win there. But yeah, other than that, the Ford Mustang Dark Horse has just looked a little bit out of it right now. They do have some speed, but they need to find some more speed. Does it still have potential? Do you think they should do a redesign? I'll leave that question up to you in the comments section. Let me know what you think down below. That's all I got for you on this one. Hope you enjoy your Friday evening here. If you're first time to the channel, would love to have your subscription. If not, I'll keep making these things. If you got a question, comment, or anything like that, leave it down in the comments section. Try to get to as many of them as I can. If you're already subscribed to the channel, you know I appreciate you all as well. And if you want to help out the channel, visit the merch store. The link is in the description. We got t-shirts, hats, sweatshirts, and stickers. And other than that, thanks for your time. Peace.